Well, guys, I did it again. Oh, I did another book outlet shopping spree, and I've got a haul for you. But I think this one is head and shoulders above some of the recent book outlet hauls I've done. So, welcome to the History Shelf. I am your host, Peg. Thank you for joining me for this book haul. I don't know why that was so formal, but I felt the need to prepare you for the bounty you are about to see. So the box of book outlet books that I picked up not too long ago is pretty heavy. And my desk is quite cluttered at the moment. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to have to bend down and pick up a stack at a time and show you what I came away with. Are you guys ready for this? It's been a while, right? You love the book hauls. All right. Apparently that's what I'm known for. I know a lot of people do way more book hauling than I do on BookTube, but I'll take it. Okay. All right. Wow. So this box was a mixture of softcover and hardcover. These two are written by the same person, and I'm really intrigued to... They're kind of a piece. I saw one and then I saw the other, and I'm like, oh, these kind of go together. So the author is Jonathan Shea, MD, PhD. And I'm not sure which one came first. Hold, please. I like to keep you guys waiting. Oh my gosh, this one was 2002. It kind of speaks to the psychology of... this came in 1994. Let's start off with this one. Psychology of combat, and especially combat trauma. This is Achilles in Vietnam, combat trauma and the undoing of character. As you can see, Jonathan Shea. I've always been intrigued about the psychological impacts of combat trauma because it kind of feeds into how we can treat our veterans today, and it exposes the ways that we're not treating them appropriately. So let me just give you a quick rundown on this book. In this strikingly original and groundbreaking book, Dr. Shea examines the psychological devastation of war by comparing the soldiers of Homer's Iliad, which I also love. The Iliad is my favorite by Homer. I prefer the Iliad over the Odyssey. By comparing the soldiers of Homer's Iliad with Vietnam veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Although the Iliad was written 27 centuries ago, it has much to teach about combat trauma, and it does, as do the more recent compelling voices and experiences of Vietnam vets. And this is just blurbed to high heaven, but this was written in 1994. So I just love how he's using ancient literature to provide a window into the soldier. It doesn't matter if there's 27 centuries separate these warriors. There's similar things going on here. So this is going to be fascinating. I can't wait for this. It's a slim little volume, but apparently he followed up in 2002 with Odysseus in America, Combat Trauma, and the Trials of Homecoming. So obviously Achilles in Vietnam looks at it from the perspective of Vietnam veterans, and the Iliad. This takes you to, obviously, Odysseus as he comes home. And what it's like to come back home after such a violent interlude. And let's see what he says here. I'm wondering which war he's going to... It might be the same war. It would make sense. It is. It's about Vietnam. So Vietnam, they're fighting, and then Vietnam coming home. In this ambitious follow-up to Achilles in Vietnam, Dr. Jonathan Shea uses the Odyssey, the story of a soldier's homecoming, to illuminate the pitfalls that trap many veterans on the road back to civilian life. Seamlessly combining important psychological work and brilliant literary interpretation with an impassioned plea to renovate American military institutions, Shea deepens our understanding of both the combat veterans' experience and one of the world's greatest classics. So this one's a little, it's a bit beefier than the other one. So obviously I will start with Achilles in Vietnam. This is going to be great. It's kind of like just some psychology, a little bit of history, and literature, all rolled into these 2 books here. So I was really pleased finding these on Book Outlet and in good condition. One of my last debacles I kind of talked to you about, I received a box of books that looked like a shark had gotten to it. But this experience was far better. All right. Now this author, I have a biography on him, by him on Douglas MacArthur. But I had never heard of this book that he has written. And it was just sitting out there all by its lonesome, and I grabbed it. This is Arthur Herman's The Idea of Decline in Western History. And it's basically just a study about the idea of Western civilization's decline. Just a whole history about the idea itself. So how fascinating is that? Let's see here. The back is just a blurb. But it says here, Arthur Herman shows that the world has been coming to an end for a very long time indeed. Herman's brilliant and entertaining survey of Western prophets of decline, from 19th century racists to the radical environmentalists of our day, demonstrates how often illiberalism comes camouflaged in fantasies about the apocalypse. And that was a quote by Michael Lind, author of The Next American Nation. All right. I'll just read to you for the first paragraph from the introduction here. It says, every time I mentioned to friends or acquaintances that I was writing a book on the decline of Western civilization, the response was almost invariably, well, is it or isn't it? I then had to point out that this was a book about the idea of Western decline as part of modern thinking, not a pronouncement on whether modern civilization was actually doomed or not. So that kind of sets the stage for you. Part 1 is on the languages of decline. Part 2 is on predicting the decline of the West. And he's got some, the first part kind of covers, you got Jakob Burckhardt and Friedrich Nietzsche. Part 2, he's got Henry and Brooks Adams, W.E.B. Du Bois, Oswald Spengler, of course, and the decline of the West, Arnold Toynbee. Part 3 is the triumph of cultural pessimism. And then here he covers the Frankfurt School and Herbert Marcuse. And then Sartre, Foucault, Fanon, and then just a couple of eco-pessimism. That must be about the environmentalists. So this sounds really great. This book was written in 1997. So I just was intrigued by that. So I picked that up for a good deal. Oh, gotta pick up another stack. Hang on one second. Right. Okay, next round. I think, and I don't have this one already, I don't think. I do not, but I do have other books by this gentleman. And sorry, I'm filming this on Halloween, and right about now, I think the kiddos are coming out to trick or treat. We're going to have to move through this and get ready to hand out candy. This is Downfall, The End of the Imperial Japanese Empire by Richard B. Frank. It's another one of these orange penguin special editions with the orange spine. As you can see behind me, I've got a nice little silver, like a World War I guy here, little wood figurine. I think I showed him in one of my last videos. This will join that selection of penguin history softcovers. But I picked up his massive work on Guadalcanal in one of my last book outlet book hauls. So this is his work on just the last days of the Imperial Japanese Empire. Let me read it to you real quick. In a riveting narrative that includes information from newly declassified documents, acclaimed historian Richard B. Frank gives a scrupulously detailed explanation of the critical months leading up to the dropping of the atomic bomb. Frank describes how American leaders learned in the summer of 1945 that their alternate strategy to end the war by invasion had been shattered by a massive Japanese buildup on the island of Kyushu. There must be someone at the door. Meanwhile, intercepted diplomatic documents revealed the dismal prospects of negotiation. Here also, for the first time, is a comprehensive narrative of how Japan's leaders were willing to risk complete annihilation to preserve the nation's existing order. I'm not smiling at that. I'm just trying to figure out, there's no one at the door, but the dogs are just having a false alarm. Okay. So Frank's definitive account demolishes long-standing myths with the stark realities of this great historical controversy. So I picked that one up. Let me just get a hold of Daisy real quick. Okay, fun times. So the next couple of books I wanted to show you, it's part of a 4-volume set, and I bought the other 2, I think, during another book haul. But I wanted to save them to show you them all at once. But I didn't know that there was a 4-volume biography out there of George Washington by a man called James Thomas Flexner. And Book Outlet had these really nice kind of naked hardcovers, and I tried to snap them up. Now, one of them arrived damaged, so I tried to get a refund or a replacement. I don't think I got the replacement, so I had to try to find it online, third party, but I did get refunded for it. But anyway, I wanted to wait until I had the whole set here. And so this is the first book in the 4-volume. It's put out by Little Brown, and let me just show it to you because it's kind of an older book. So this is George Washington, The Forge of Experience, 1732 to 1775, again by James Thomas Flexner. I have not heard of this guy, so if anyone knows about this, please comment below. Tell me what the story is on this. As you can see, it's a naked hardcover. It's an older book. They don't print books like this anymore with the picture on the back and the little bit of writing. It's really lightweight. It's just some black and white photos that are reproduced in here and stuff. So it's nothing like glossy or anything like that. But this edition from Little Brown, oh wow, this can't be right. Well, it says copyright 1965, but this is definitely, this has to be a newer print. I'll figure it out, guys, but yeah, I'm not sure when this was printed. But anyway, so this is volume 1, and it covers, obviously, the year 1732 to 1775, right? So the next one, I think this is the one I had to look online for. They were missing this volume. So it's slightly different. This one does have a dust jacket because I bought it third party. And this is George Washington in the American Revolution, 1775 to 1783. It's still a little brown. It's not a naked hardcover, though. Let's get a little bit of it. As you can see, this is the used sticker. But this is in pretty good condition. I bought it used. The paper stock is better. So this might be some type of knockoff because the paper is a little bit grainier. You can kind of tell. And that this is a first edition right here. So, but I did get that. And then the other 2, hang on a second. Okay, and then the 3rd volume in the trilogy is George Washington and the New Nation, 1783 to 1793. I also had to buy this used. I'm trying to remember what happened. Oh, there's a rip. I can fix that. But, yeah, they didn't have all 4 volumes at Book Outlet, so I think I was able to score. I thought I had scored 3, but then one of them was really damaged, and they didn't have a replacement. So I ended up having 2 from Book Outlet, and 2 I had to go buy used third party. But you know, then this one's definitely a nicer. It's definitely an older book, as you can see. Ooh, kind of pretty though. Kind of prefer that to the naked hardcovers. So, I mean, it's a 4-volume history. I'm trying to see if there's a good description of this to read to you. And then the final volume, then we go back to the Book Outlet version, which is this naked hardcover. So the final volume is Anguish and Farewell, 1793 to 1799. And that goes into his decline and stuff. So, and then just blurbs about the other books in the series. Yeah. So, I've never heard of this massive work, so I'm just intrigued, and I kind of want to check it out. And it kind of looks really nice. I'm not going to lie, it looks really nice having all these books together with the same similar look and feel. So, I picked up this 4-volume set thanks to Book Outlet for providing those missing copies, but I also had to search for a couple on my own. And I need to search for some space on my bookshelves for this set. All right. Moving on, another chunkster of a book, but this is a nice trade, soft cover. If you've been following my channel, you know that I've been collecting some works by David Hackett Fischer. And this was another one I really wanted to get. And I got a very nice bargain copy here. It's a little yellowed on the top, but nothing too bad. And this is Champlain's Dream, winner of the Pulitzer Prize. So this says the subtitle is The Visionary Adventurer Who Made a New World in Canada. So Champlain, nice. It's a thick one. But yeah, no, it's a remainder. But it's in good nick. Let's see here. The enthralling biography of the visionary adventurer, explorer, master, mariner, soldier, artist, spy, who has straddled our history for 400 years. David Hackett Fischer, one of North America's most acclaimed historians, brings to life, with rare immediacy and drama, the story of Samuel de Champlain. A remarkable leader in his time, he dreamed of humanity and peace in a world riven by violence, built the first European settlement in Canada, founded on a dream of harmony and respect, and played a role in starting the growth of 3 populations, the Quebecois, it's Quebec, but it's Quebecois, Acadian, and Métis, in the place he called Quebec. His legacy is with us today and helps define Canada. With consummate storytelling skill and comprehensive scholarship, drawing on Champlain's own diaries and accounts, Fischer has definitively recreated for us the life of a rare and fascinating man, and the result is inspiring and gripping. So this will go along with my other David Hackett Fischers, and this sounds really great. I love exploration and reading about explorers. Love it. All right, this might be, no, we've already shown you a few hardcovers, but I've been meaning to get this. This is written by Gareth Russell, who wrote a history on the life of Catherine Howard, 5th wife of King Henry VIII. This is all about the Titanic. I've been meaning to read this. Now, there is another book on Book Outlet that is a similar title, but I think it's the UK version, but one is longer than the other, so I don't know if they cover the same topics or if this is a streamlined version of that. But this is the American release of The Ship of Dreams, The Sinking of the Titanic, and the End of the Edwardian Era. It's about an 8 of books. But I've been wanting to get this. I've been seeing it making the rounds, and I've been wanting to read it. So it's a riveting account of the Titanic disaster and the unraveling of the society that created it. In April 1912, 6 notable people were among those privileged to experience first-class passage on the Ship of Dreams, the RMS Titanic. Lucy Leslie, Countess of Rothes, son of the British Empire Tommy Andrews, American captain of industry John Thayer, and his son Jack, Jewish-American immigrant Ida Strauss, and American model and movie star Dorothy Gibson. Within a week of setting sail, they were all caught up in the horrifying disaster of the Titanic sinking. Today, we can see their stories and the Titanic voyage as the beginning of the end of the established hierarchy of the Edwardian era. Writing with the immediacy and urgency of a novelist, using previously unpublished sources, deck plans, journals, and surviving artifacts, historian Gareth Russell immerses us in a time of unprecedented change in British and American history. Through these passengers' intertwining stories, he examines social, technological, political, and economic forces that would change their lives just as much as their intimate experiences of bravery, tragedy, and selflessness. Yeah, so this sounds great, huh? It's a little bit more than just the disaster itself. I like how he kind of spools it back a little bit, and then kind of looks at the aftermath. So fantastic! All you fans of anything Titanic history related, I'm sure you've had your antennae up for this book. But let me know what you think. Oh, let me grab a few more. Hang on. Okay, 20 minutes in. All right. This book's a little bit beat up, but it still counts as a bargain book, and I took it. It was a pretty decent deal. It's normally like a $30 soft cover. But Civil War history, military history, and you know I'm all over it. What is it? It is The Gettysburg Campaign, A Study in Command by Edwin B. Coddington. Now, I've read just about everything there is to read about Gettysburg. I mean, I've analyzed that battle in detail. This is one I have not read. I cannot believe it. This came out. This was 1968. Okay, so this one kind of got missed in all the deep reading I've done on Gettysburg. But I'm intrigued. It's a chunkster, as you can see. It's about 866 pages. It says here, the Battle of Gettysburg remains one of the most controversial military actions in America's history. Now remember, this is probably the dust jacket copy from 1960s. So I don't know how controversial it is. But it is one of the most studied. That's true. Professor Coddington's is an analysis not only of the battle proper, but of the actions of both Union and Confederate armies for the 6 months prior to the battle, and of the factors affecting General Meade's decision not to pursue the retreating Confederate forces. This book contends that Gettysburg was a crucial Union victory, primarily because of the effective leadership of Union forces, not, as has often been said, only because the North was the beneficiary of Lee's mistakes. Thank you, Professor Coddington. I absolutely 100% agree. The Union orchestrated a victory, and it wasn't because Lee made a mistake. Okay? With Pickett's charge. Across the board, the Union made the right calls from the beginning when General Buford and his cavalry established a picket line and started to defend as they were being pushed back into Gettysburg, and they held them long enough. The Confederate forces approaching on the pike there, they held them off long enough for I think Reynolds, Union General John Reynolds' forces to move up and to start to dig in. They eventually were pushed through the city of Gettysburg, but then they found that wonderful high ground shaped like a fish hook and dug in. So I can't wait. I can't wait to revisit the Gettysburg campaign with a whole new analysis from a writer I've not read before. So I was really pleased to see this on. You can see it's a little bit beat up, but shoo, I took it because, that was like low stock on that one. Had to take it. Next book, big chunkster hardcover. I paid a little bit more for this, but I've been wanting it, and Book Outlet had the best price. It's great quality. All I have is a little bit of a remainder mark, but I've been meaning to get this. This is The Transcendentalists and Their World by Robert A. Gross. This came out, I think, last year, and I've seen it on other booktube channels and been eyeballing it. So it finally hit the right price range, so I took it. Let's see here. I don't want to. Got a few more books left, and we're already at 23 minutes. But let's see here. It says here, in The Transcendentalists and Their World, the distinguished historian Robert A. Gross gives a rich and beautifully detailed account of the town that Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Nathaniel Hawthorne, and the Alcotts called home. Their Concord, he shows, was primed for revolt and was hardly a sleepy, bucolic place fit only for poets and philosophers. I should go back. It says, why Concord? How did a small and seemingly quiet village in the hinterlands of Boston become, by popular reckoning, the birthplace of two revolutions, the American War of Independence that began with shots fired by the local Minutemen, and the American Renaissance of literature and thought that began with the Transcendentalists' challenge to establish pieties? All right, and then he goes into the different characters there. So the Transcendentalists and their world is both an intimate journey into the life of a town and a searching cultural study of major American writers as they plumbed the reaches of the universe for spiritual truths and took stock of the rapidly changing contours of their surroundings. It shows us familiar literary figures alongside their neighbors, white and black, devout and blasphemous, and situated at every level of the social order. And it reveals how this common life in concord entered powerfully into their works. No American community has been recovered so richly and located so meaningfully within the larger American story. So I just love reading about Emerson and Thoreau, and I read a biography on Thoreau for Buddy Reed. Was it last year or the year before? I think it was 2 years ago. And it was great. So I'm kind of looking forward to going back to this world and revisiting it. This book is over 800 pages long, but I've got a nice hardcover copy to place on my shelves when I am ready to get to it. Next book I picked up, and I've been meaning to read this author, and I'm hoping this gives me a kind of like a foot in the door. And I think I want to find a nice volume of his collected stories. I think it's called the African... What is this? What he's known for writing something that is a set of... Well, he wrote Things Fall Apart, but this is his personal memoir. And this is Chinua Achebe. Chinua Achebe, There Was a Country. A Personal History of Biafra, which is a country in Africa. Let's see here. The defining experience of Chinua Achebe's life was the Nigerian Civil War, also known as the Biafran War, of 1967 to 1970. The conflict was infamous for its savage impact on the Biafran people, Chinua Achebe's people, many of whom were starved to death after the Nigerian government blockaded their borders. By then, Achebe was already a world-renowned novelist with a young family to protect. He took the Biafran side in the conflict and served his government as a roving cultural ambassador, from which vantage he absorbed the war's full horror. Immediately after the war, Achebe took refuge in an academic post in the United States, and for more than 40 years he has maintained a considered silence on the events of those terrible years, addressing them only obliquely through his poetry. Now, decades in the making, comes a towering reckoning with one of modern Africa's most fateful events, from a writer whose words and courage have left an enduring stamp on world literature. Achebe begins his story with Nigeria's birth pangs and the story of his own upbringing as a man and as a writer, so that we may understand both the young country's keen sense of promise, which too quickly turned to horror, and Achebe's view of the particular obligation of the artist, especially in a time of war. For Chinua Achebe, to be a serious writer is to be a committed writer, to speak for one's history, one's beliefs, and one's people, especially when others cannot. A marriage of history and memoir, vivid first-hand observation, and decades of further research and reflection. There Was a Country is a work whose wisdom and compassion remind us of Chinua Achebe's place as one of the great literary and moral voices of our age. Fabulous. And there is our author. I'm looking forward to reading this. As you know, I recently Africa is a very, something I just love studying. And I recently just wrote a review for a book that is brand new called Africa is Not a Country. Notes on a Bright Continent by Deepo Faloyan. It's fantastic. And I've posted that review or links to it or show you or telling you how to get there on all my social media accounts. So check that out. But I'm always looking to read more about Africa and people's personal experiences there. So I was really pleased to get that from Book Outlet. Okay, we are down to our final 4 books. All right, we'll stick with something geographical again. We're going to go to another part of the world, which I wanted to learn more about. And it is a new revised and expanded edition. So I paid a little bit more, but I wanted it, and it's in a nice hardcover copy here. And this is Georgia, in the Mountains of Poetry by Peter Nasmith. The classic work now revised and expanded. It's just really important to know about this particular spot in the world. Stalin was a Georgian. But yeah, anyway, I wanted to pick this up. So let me just get into this for you. Georgia has been called the world's most beautiful country, and its rich history has spanned 3,000 years, yet only little is known about it beyond its borders. This topical and vital book by the ideal chronicler, Peter Nasmyth, who has lived in and traveled extensively throughout Georgia for 30 years, is the acclaimed comprehensive introduction to its remarkable people, landscape, and culture. I'm just going to take a drink of water. Thank you. About the size of Ireland, Georgia straddles Europe and Asia and is among the most geographically diverse places on Earth, and its position on the Black Sea and the legendary Silk Road has made it strategically important to this day. In 25 years, Georgia has undergone a dramatic transformation. Once the richest communist republic, Georgia became one of the world's poorest countries before turning into today's democratic capitalist state. Despite remaining disputes over its regions of Abkhazia and South Ossetia, Georgia's strong sense of nationhood has reinvigorated the country. Vivid and comprehensive, Peter Nasmyth's Georgia and the Mountains of Poetry is a unique eyewitness account of Georgia's rebirth and creates an unforgettable portrait of its remarkable landscape, history, people, and culture. So doesn't that look fantastic? I've been meaning to get this. I've been wanting to learn more about Georgia, especially with all the recent events, not just recent from the last year or two, but from, I think, did Putin invade? No, he invaded Crimea, but, Georgia's right there, man. It's important. Okay, so what's next? Oh, here's a little memoir. I just thought this was interesting looking. Just seeing as how what's going on in British politics right now. Tiny little paperback. It's called Tory Boy, Memoirs of the Last Conservative by Ed West. I just thought it might give me a little insight into just parliamentary politics and what does a conservative mean in Britain as opposed to what that definition is here and how it changes and how people hijack it and use it and whatever. I'm so over politics as we approach voting day. Brought up by eccentric intellectuals, Ed West experienced what he believed was a fairly normal childhood of political pamphlets as bedtime reading and family holidays to East Germany. In his mid-20s, West found himself embracing a mindset usually acquired alongside a realization that all music post-1955 is garbage, agreeing with everything said in the Telegraph, and all the other bad things people get in middle age. This is his journey to becoming a real-life Tory boy. Foregoing the typically tedious and shouty tone of the right, West provides that rare gem of a conservative book, one that people of any political alignment can read, if only to laugh at West's gallows humor and dry wit. Crammed with self-deprecating anecdotes and enlightening political insights, Tory Boy discloses a life shaped by politics and the realization that perhaps this obsession does more harm than good. So, as you can see, that's what appealed to me, is that anyone can read it, and he kind of like self-deprecating humor. I enjoy that. So I just picked that up for fun. Don't look at my hair, thank you. All right, almost there. The next book I wanted to get because I know this writer, and I've read some of her work, and there's one of her, I think her most recent book is The Future is History, but this is Masha Gessen. And this is a little-known book by her that sounds very intriguing. I was able to get my hands on it. This is Where the Jews Aren't. The sad and absurd story of Barabajans. Sorry. Barabajan. I'm going to say Barabajan. The sad and absurd story of Barabajan, Russia's Jewish autonomous region. By Masha Gessen. Slim little volume. Yeah, is this, I don't know what publisher this is, but, Shockin', or Jewish Encounters, I don't know, but this is Masha Gessen. So what is this about? Let's do this. From the acclaimed author of The Man Without a Face, that's the one I read by Masha Gessen, which was fantastic. She wrote about Putin way back in the day, way before he became even crazier than he was, but I mean, the monster he is now, but she wrote about him and warned about him a while ago. That was a really good book. So from the acclaimed author of The Man Without a Face, the previously untold story of the Jews in 20th century Russia that reveals the complex, strange, and heart-wrenching truth behind the familiar narrative that begins with pogroms and ends with emigration. In 1929, the Soviet government set aside a sparsely populated area in the Soviet Far East for settlement by Jews. The place was called Barabajan. The idea of an autonomous Jewish region was championed by Jewish communists, Yiddishists, and intellectuals who envisioned a haven of post-oppression Jewish culture. By the mid-1930s, tens of thousands of Soviet Jews, as well as about 1,000 Jews from abroad, had moved there. The state building ended quickly in the late 1930s with arrests and purges instigated by Stalin. Shocker. But after the Second World War, Barabajan received another influx of Jews, those who had been dispossessed by the war. In the late 1940s, a second wave of arrests and imprisonments swept through the area, traumatizing Barabajan's Jews into silence and effectively shutting down most of the Jewish cultural enterprises that had been created. Where the Jews Aren't is a haunting account of the dream of Barabajan and how it became the cracked and crooked mirror in which we can see the true story of the Jews in 20th century Russia. So I think this is a very important piece to read. It's a very short book. It's about 150 pages, minus the endnotes. So I was intrigued by this. This goes along with all my different Russian and Soviet Union studies. Okay, so rounding out this the most recent book outlet book haul is this book by, I've never heard of this guy before, A. Roger Eckerch, but this is American Sanctuary. This book was like $1.95, and I said I'm going to pick it up for $1.95. American Sanctuary: Mutiny, Martyrdom, and National Identity in the Age of Revolution by A. Roger Eckerch. I'm sure they still have many copies of this available. It's super cheap. If you're interested, after I read about this to you, check it out on Book Outlet. Okay. And well, it even got a blurb from Gordon S. Wood, so you know it's got to be good. It says here, American Sanctuary begins in 1797 with the bloodiest mutiny ever suffered by the Royal Navy on the British frigate HMS Hermione, 4,000 miles from England's shores off the western coast of Puerto Rico. In the midst of the most storied epoch in British seafaring history, the mutiny struck at the very heart of military authority and at Britain's hierarchical social order. Revolution was in the air. America had won its War of Independence, the French Revolution was still unfolding, and a ferocious rebellion loomed in Ireland, with countless dissidents already arrested. Most of the Hermione mutineers had scattered throughout the North Atlantic. One of them, Jonathan Robbins, had made his way to American shores, and the British were asking for his extradition. Robbins let it be known that he was an American citizen from Danbury, Connecticut, and that he had been impressed into service by the British. John Adams, the Federalist successor to Washington as president, in one of the most catastrophic blunders of his administration, sanctioned Robbins' extradition according to the terms of the Jay Treaty of 1794. Convicted of murder and piracy by a court-martial in Jamaica, Robbins was sentenced by the British to death, hauled up on the fore-yard arm of the frigate Acasta, blindfolded with his hands tied behind his back, and hanged. Adams's miscalculation ignited a political firestorm, only to be fanned by news of Robbins's execution without his constitutional rights of due process and trial by jury. Thomas Jefferson, then vice president and leader of the emergent Republican Party, said, "No one circumstance since the establishment of our government has affected the popular mind more." Congressional Republicans tried to censure Adams, and the Federalist majority, in a bitter blow to the president, were unable to muster a vote of confidence condoning Robbins' surrender. So American Sanctuary brilliantly lays out in full detail the story of how the Robbins affair and the presidential campaign of 1800 inflamed the new nation and set in motion a constitutional crisis, resulting in Adams' defeat and Jefferson's election as the third president of the United States. Eckerch Eckert writes that the aftershocks of Robin's martyrdom helped to shape the infant republic's identity in the way Americans envisioned themselves. We see how the Hermione crisis led directly to the country's historic decision to grant political asylum to refugees from foreign governments, a major achievement in fulfilling the resonant promise of American independence, as voiced by Tom Paine, to provide an asylum for mankind. That sounds really good, doesn't it? So that's the final book. I picked it up. It sounds fantastic. And there you have it, everybody. There is my most recent book outlet book haul, and I think it was a huge success. There are so many just juicy topics here. I just don't know where to begin. I might just have to close my eyes and just pick one out. What do you suggest? Help me out. Okay, gang, let me know what you think below. I really appreciate you watching. I appreciate all of your likes and comments, and thank you for subscribing if you do. And yeah, I hope you have a great day. Let me know what you think. Continue reading. Be happy. Be well. Be kind. We'll talk soon, BookTube. Bye-bye.